Guys, let me just give you some tips that how would you explore a piece of literature while using textual scholarship and the tips of textual scholarship, right? So remember that we are concerned with the text of any piece of literature when we are addressing this question. That do we have an accurate version of what we are studying, right? So remember that you are concerned with the text and you are exploring the text for the sake of the authenticity of the text, right? So the authenticity of the text is under exploration when you are concerned with the, with the textual scholarship. And for such an activity, we need to go through very close editing and very careful proofreading, right? And we are exploring, those tips of editing and proofreading for the sake of, those processes which are involved and which took place while the text came down to us, right? So this is something which is done by very skilled linguists because, they are considering very minute details for the sake of the examination of the text. And they are also aware of the literary criticism, and they also maintain bibliography because they are actually in the search of changes and variations which took place, right? So they must be having the knowledge of various versions of the same text which is under examination, right? And they should also know that what are the tips involved for very close editing and proofreading in order to come up with the research points regarding the version of the text under consideration, right? So these are the points which are explored when we are concerned with the textual scholarship. And we must also focus on the possible reasons, right? Like some reasons might be based on the aesthetic, value of the text, right? And then we can also know the, some possibilities which are based on scientific, right? So aesthetic as well as scientific reasons must also be taken into account while exploring the version of the text for the sake of research, right? Then for interpretation and evaluation, we should also consider that most of the text, they are gone through a lot of changes from the, the accurate version of the author to the modified version, which came down to the audience, right? There are a lot of changes taking place. So some changes are definitely taken place because of the interpretation of the, and the evaluation of the text, right? These are some of the tips, like when you know how to evaluate a particular version of the text from aesthetic point of view, using your scientific tools and knowing how to proofread and edit a particular text, then these are the tools which are indispensable for researchers who want to explore a particular text of a piece of literature, right? And the textual criticism is basically, the combination of an artist as well as a scientist, because we are required to evaluate the artistic value of literature as well, while doing those changes which took place and evaluating them scientifically in terms of the linguistic analyses and also those processes which were involved in the textual, variations. Okay, so we must know that these are the points which can be explored. And I'm giving you an example of the Shakespearean play Hamlet. That Hamlet, which is one of the greatest English plays produced by Shakespeare, right? So the greatness of this play was discovered by editors, and it was some 400 years later from the the production of the play by the great author, right? So that's based on the editing processes, and then the words and the phrases which were changed, they carried out with the meaning, and we can still question that what happened and what was the value of the aesthetic value of the text which came down to us. So we can explore and the richness of the interpretation, which is the quality of a great play like Hamlet, that can also be commented by researchers while keeping in mind those particular, points which are available. And you can also think about the meanings of the particular text which were produced by the text written in 17th century, 16th or 17th century text, and now looking at those meanings, that what changes, what variations are taking place. So that could also be one, question in the textual analysis or the textual scholarship, right? There is one line which is taken from Hamlet, and it is, "Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt," right? So this is actually the line which is taken from Act 1, Scene 2. And the word, it is supposed that the solid was previously sallied or sullied, right? So you can imagine that such minute details, and then exploring them for the sake of meanings, for the sake of aesthetics, for the sake of changes which took place. So that is actually, a kind of activity, or an example of activities which are, taking place by researchers in textual scholarship when you are exploring a piece of literature from textual scholarship point of view. There are, some good books, reference books, which could be used by you as researchers. And let me just mention one is James Thorpe, and the title is Principles of Textual Criticism, right? So you can use this book in order to know the tips and techniques which are used in textual scholarship. And one more example is there. It's written by D.C. Gretham, and it's the Textual Scholarship and Introduction. So these two reference books would serve you a lot if you are interested in the textual scholarship and you want to explore, you want to carry out your research in literature, and particularly you want to explore and do the textual analysis of a particular piece of literature.